Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining this afternoon's session with the AudioCodes live, AudioCodes Launchpad teaser session for the upcoming AudioCodes Launchpad webinar series, or sorry, workshop series. So let me just get on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm Jay Wyatt, and I'll be presenting today's session. And the Launchpad kind of overview sessions are ahead of the actual EMEA series of workshops that we're starting in the end of April 2022. I've been working in IT for approximately 25 years. Of that, I've been a UC consultant with mostly Microsoft UC solutions for about the last 10 years. To give you a little bit of a background as to why we created the Launchpad series of workshops. So last year, and may have actually been the year before, actually, that we actually enrolled and delivered the Microsoft Teams calling workshops globally. And we found that many organizations, found it quite, or as I say, really difficult to commit to the 2 consecutive days that were required to complete the calling workshops, especially when it required, numerous individuals within the organization to attend and complete the various different sections, such as operations, IT, the network guys, network security guys, and the communication team as examples. So what we quickly realized that for many organizations, this just wasn't practical, and many couldn't really commit to the 2 full days of workshops. So, we were tasked with looking at the course structure and trying to see if there's a way that we could kind of trim it down. But we quickly realized that it simply wasn't possible to trim down the course to even 1 day without compromising the content and the quality of the course. So with the kind of ongoing pandemic and the increasing demand for many organizations that needed our assistance with kind of the consultative engagements, we wanted a mechanism to reach a larger audience in a consultative way. So what we decided to do was to run our own Microsoft Teams workshops and call them Launchpad. So, our goal throughout the series is to help, you guys and develop a plan that will kind of help each of you move closer to your team's deployment goals. AudioCodes has a long history in the discussion of helping many organizations like yourselves move to your voice aspirations. For attending the Launchpad series of workshops, AudioCodes, what we will do, and you'll see this throughout the slides that I'm going to present to you today, that we collate information during each of the workshops, which allows us to build a much bigger sort of story of where you are, where you're at. And coupled to that, we will provide a discovery and planning workshop with you so that we can then give you a detailed report outlining your readiness to move to Microsoft Teams. And the great thing about this is all we ask is that you attend, you join in, you participate in the actual sessions, and we don't charge a penny for it. It's completely free. Okay. So a quick overview of our approach and series. We've broken the course down into 6 easy to follow sessions. We initially intend on running 2 courses within EMEA. So if you're able to attend 4 of the 6 from one course, you could then complete the remaining 2 sessions from the second course. We know that this makes sense, and it's easier to attend the sessions, and they're more consumable without taking up too much of your day. Equally, if you don't have to attend every session, if you feel that session 2 and perhaps session 5 are where you need additional help and advice, then you can just enroll in those sessions. But it is kind of really important to note that with each session, we do kind of build on to the next session, and there will be references from one to the other because, like I said, it's one homogeneous course, so it's important that you kind of get a feel for each of those different sessions. The course is intended to be delivered interactively, and this is what I'm saying on the last slide. we're using Microsoft Teams. We're using the actual app, the system that we're talking about. And normally we have, I would say, kind of 15 to 20 attendees per session. And we do this, as it's, like I said, intends to be interactive, with kind of regular questions and answers, and with you guys kind of sharing your experiences, because you could all be at different stages of deploying Microsoft Teams. So it really helps when you kind of bounce off each other and we bounce off you, and to kind of get a feel of what you're doing and how you're doing it. For each session, I will be joined by my highly skilled, knowledgeable colleagues from around the globe. And I would say actually each of them bring kind of different specializations and expertise to the session they're joining me with, which is really fantastic, because I'm a generalist, and some of these guys are so laser focused on the particular area that they're actually dealing with. Which I think really adds to the quality and the level of the information that we deliver and we provide to you. Equally, guys, if you have colleagues that haven't attended today, have no idea of Launchpad, you've not discussed it with them, but they're going to be dealing with the different areas that make up the course, then please get them involved. They may already be highly skilled and knowledgeable people. However, I guarantee that there will be information that they may not have even considered, or even a shared experience from one of the other delegates on the course, that may be massively beneficial. So, looking at how we kind of run the actual workshops themselves, I know that we're all pretty much well versed with Microsoft Teams meetings. We've all attended them, and we've all had a bit of fun with the different things that you can kind of do. And I even had a bit of fun recently with one of the latest things, which is actually making your wrinkles disappear. But as kind of previously mentioned, the workshop series is designed to be discussion and interactive, and we invite each of you to participate through chat and interaction. If you have a question, then you can raise your hand through the hand icon at the top of the screen, and we'll obviously do our best whilst we're presenting to kind of answer the questions as they arise, because that's what it's all about. If you don't feel confident in raising your hand and actually saying, look, I've had this experience, or we've got this kind of system and we'd like to do it this way, then by all means, you can raise the question in the chat and we'll answer the question as we go along. But we do try and get everybody to be inclusive. We'd obviously ask, when we're not speaking, that everybody can remain on mute as best practice. And I know, sometimes it's kind of overlooked, so we just deal with it as it happens. Obviously, to complement the sessions, we'll be utilising surveys. And the surveys are designed in a way that you may answer, and we can kind of address your specific needs in the follow-up discovery and planning workshop when we actually conduct them. I'd say in kind of most of the sessions, we tend to have roughly, I think, probably about 10 to 15 surveys. Each kind of takes 90 seconds or less, comprised of perhaps 6 questions or less. Some are multiple choice, some are picking the best answer. We will pause from time to time to answer more questions as they arise, because even actually doing the surveys, we do find that it actually raises some of the questions. So a little bit about how the kind of interactive polling, the surveys kind of work. You'll get a pop-up for each survey, which looks like what you kind of see on the screen right now. We'll give you a little bit of time to select your answers. Typically, we may discuss the questions in detail. That's kind of, as we found when we were running these in the US last year, that's quite normal. And it's actually, sometimes we get quite a lot of interaction when the questions are being raised, which is absolutely fantastic. Each of the answers will, like I said, will be collected and placed in a design document as a kind of an outcome from the actual series of workshops, and like I said, is the basis then for conducting the discovery workshop, should you choose to do it. This will kind of help, I think, customize the deliverables to you, as well as collect the needed inputs to help you guys move forward. The surveys utilize forms, but please don't worry if you don't have forms installed on your Teams or it's completely locked down. The questions, as we raise them, will also be available through the questions drop down, so you can actually see them. We had a few people panic; they couldn't see the questions or the surveys that were being raised, and it's purely because they didn't have forms installed. So that's kind of overview of the Launchpad workshops and how we kind of manage the sessions. And you'll get a reminder of this on each workshop session anyway. But now what I want to do is to kind of look at each of the sessions and give you a kind of brief overview of each one. Okay, so the first session that we do is the discovery and planning workshop. This session really prepares you for all of the information that needs to be collected about your current environment, what you're using, how you use it, and really in real simple terms, we use the kind of basis of who, what, when, where, why, and lastly how. Okay, there are some references to the other sessions within session one, because you've got to think that the discovery and planning is kind of the all-encompassing session, which it's the process is very. I would say actually the process is very similar to creating a kind of high-level design document, or HLD, as we would for previous kind of UC platforms. And as an example, session 5 is analog and legacy integration. Well, a lot of information that we gather during the discovery and planning phase, this is also key information that we'll talk about in session 5. So there are going to be things that do overlap and cross over, but that's just the way that the workshops have been designed to be delivered. We discussed setting your vision, the who and the why. Who, clearly we need to know who are the stakeholders, who are the key participants, who is responsible for what, and who will be impacted, and of course the why. Why are we doing this project? Why is it so important? There's going to be different answers for every different organization. And once we've gone through and we've set the vision, the kind of remaining questions that should kind of then support the vision. What are the project goals? Defines kind of project success. When, the project timelines, key dates, milestones, the where, which office regions, remote offices, work from home, the road warriors and whoever else is going to be using this system. And obviously the how. How are we going to implement this? How are we going to train people? How are we going to drive adoption? And how are we going to operate the platform long term going forward? An additional, I think, to the kind of how would include your kind of, it's going to be your current environment. Typically, as part of this process, you would also need to have a network assessment and perhaps even an environmental assessment. We'll also discuss the project and business goals, as these are really the key metrics to ensuring that the project is a success. And lastly, we also cover obviously user adoption and training, although we again I kind of rack my brains. I think that's session 2 actually. Session 2, we actually cover that off in a great more detail, because again it's a huge part of actually adopting Microsoft Teams. Okay, so this is a session that I particularly enjoy, and I think it's really an area that frequently gets overlooked. For me, this session is all about what I call the people factor. And people are emotive, they're emotional, and need to be handled in a way that doesn't really alienate them or make them feel overwhelmed with new technology. User adoption is a key area for Microsoft. It's also a key area for us at AudioCodes. A recent event, a phrase that struck in my mind was that user adoption does not magically happen, and it's true. You have to approach this from a really non-prescriptive perspective. And I think during this session, we discuss, how to identify solution champions, how to make them, the most, or how to make the most of the solution champions, and how they can feed back real world kind of experience and develop a solution being delivered. We also discuss user personas, what they are, and how they kind of benefit the overall process. If I can say, post-pandemic, which I think is a little ironic, given that my wife currently has a severe case of COVID. The thinking behind kind of user personas has changed a little, and it's actually changed a little bit for me, because I used to say that most organizations will have around kind of 5 user personas. I mean, there's no hard written rule. Let's just be clear about that. You can have 5, you can have 20. If your organization requires you to have 20 different personas, then that's absolutely great. But I think with the way that things have changed and the way that we've had to change, the way that we kind of think and work, and our work environment has changed, that now we're probably looking at around about 7 or more perhaps user personas, and that actually doesn't even include the kind of meeting room environments, and obviously any kind of accessibility requirements. So we also include within this session meeting spaces. It has become hugely important, because again, this is something that's changed massively over the last 2 years. Meeting rooms themselves have I think become smaller, because we've got such a disparate workforce now that so many people are working from home, and some people working in satellite offices, some people are job sharing and or hot desking. The whole workplace the term hybrid has become par for the course, because that's the way that we're operating now and kind of going forward. I think also in this session, we do discuss kind of device management, although that's really covered in session 6. Again, there's kind of overlap with different sessions, but this session, in session 6, we'll actually cover that in a great more detail. And I think obviously the last part with session 2 is the user adoption. How do you get your users to embrace the new technology? What mechanisms are there to assist your users? After all, you've put all of this effort into delivering and implement Microsoft Teams. Now what you need to do is get everybody to use it. Okay. And it's, like I said, it's a really key area for me, because in the past, I've been brought into UC projects to get them back online, only to discover that kind of user adoption has been completely overlooked, and there's been no real consideration to the people that will actually decide if the implementation is a success or failure. Because at the end of the day, it will be the users are the ones that are going to be shouting from the rooftops if something's been overlooked, and it's something, all the things that we kind of cover in our sessions. Now, I've included this slide, or I decided actually this morning to share this slide with you, and it's not directly linked to LaunchPad, but I think it is actually on the previous session and some of the other sessions that we do, because I think the information that is readily available on the Microsoft website, the URL is there for you to go and have a look. I've included it because it highlights the need to really understand the users and the environment your Microsoft Teams deployment will cover, because this is what Microsoft is seeing right now. These are actually statistics that have come from Microsoft. And I always, I love statistics, but looking across the top bar here, we've got 45% of employees use social tools at work. Well, we probably kind of already knew that as IT professionals. But it says 80% of average employee time is spent on collaboration. Okay. Yeah, that's probably true, actually, because I could think I probably spend 80% of my time on meetings and collaborating with colleagues. 5 generations in one office, not an exception. No, that's probably pretty much par for the course these days. The 2 last metrics were ones that really kind of, I thought, wow, okay. And it's 72% of employees work remotely. Well, we know that. We know obviously that a lot of people are still working from home. Still, we've got this hybrid way of working. But what I'm reading and seeing is that that's actually here to stay. And this is what I mean about user personas and how you're going to have to kind of think differently about how people are going to work. Are you actually going to give them everything they have typically in their office? They're going to have in their workstation at home, including maybe even a desk phone, or are you going to be responsible for a printer at home? Do they need to have, all these kind of things you need to think about. And then it says 4 times electronic devices per user. Well, that's no surprise either, because I've got 2 laptops, I've got 2 phones, I've got iPad. I think the majority of them have Teams on them, and I use them in various different ways. And so it's hardly surprising there's kind of four times kind of electronic users or devices per user. So this is just something I want to share with you. And obviously the last metric here is the 270 million monthly active users, which, that's a phenomenal amount of users, that especially when you consider there was 30 million before, or I'm going to say at the end of 20 or beginning of 2019, 2020, something like that, there was 30 million users. But what that does actually tell you is that only 30% have actually bought Microsoft Phone System licenses. So if you've not adopted Microsoft Teams yet and you're still at the start of that journey, you're not alone. Many organizations have yet to fully adopt and embrace Microsoft Teams for their primary communications platform, and that's why we're doing these sessions. That's why we're here today, to introduce you to the the Launchpad workshops, so that you can really understand what it is we're providing and what it is you need to do to make it a success. Okay, so moving on then to session 3. This is the pilot and production workshops. That takes you through, I think, firstly, kind of understanding the difference between a proof of concept and a pilot, which really does get some people confused, because it doesn't really help when I think some organizations will loosely use the same terminology for the same thing, even though actually they are completely different. So we actually break that down within session 3 to help you kind of understand the differences between both of these things, because they are significantly different and they have different outcomes. They have different use cases, business cases, success criteria. Okay. And even one, for example, a pilot, there may actually be a charge for a pilot, because in many instances, the work that goes into setting up a pilot, okay, will pretty much be standing up a complete environment as if it's for the complete solution. So they are completely distinctly different things. And I think for some organizations, it's clearly it's essential to complete a proof of concept. This may be due to having a legacy environment, or perhaps some other essential application. It might be CRM that's linked to your phones, or there might be some other thing, some other unknown, that you feel that a proof of concept will be really beneficial, and it will really help to prove that your system is going to work well with Microsoft Teams, and there's not going to be anything that jumps out of the woodwork once you actually migrate over to Microsoft Teams. It stops people being able to function, do their jobs, do their roles on a day-to-day basis. And it's essential to kind of put together success criteria. I did talk briefly about that in my first paragraph, but having a success criteria with a really valid kind of checkpoint schedule, and we'll take you through all these different processes within session 3, because again, it's something that really gets kind of overlooked. A lot of the people think, right, okay, well, we'll stand up a pilot, or we'll do a proof of concept for such and such organization, and they put all of this effort into delivering it, and then say, okay, well, we're going to stand it up for, I don't know, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, even 3 months, and they just let it go. And then at the end of, they have a meeting, go, what? How did your proof of concept go? How did your pilot go? Well, do you know what? Something else come along, and we couldn't do this, and we couldn't do that, and I just couldn't pick it up again. And you find that the last 3 months have been a complete waste of time, or the last 4 weeks. So what you actually need to do is, sit down with a vendor, and actually say, right, okay, well, we want to do a proof of concept for 8 weeks. And during that 8 weeks, we've got a milestone, let's say every fortnight or every week, depending on how quickly you want to make sure how much resources you're going to put towards that project. You actually say, right, week 1, we want to make sure A works, week 2, B, week 3, C. And you have these milestones. And if those milestones aren't met, then you go back to, the previous milestone until you actually have success. Okay, and it's fundamental that process is actually created and completed. And like I said, we'll cover that in session 3 in detail, so that you really understand how to kind of take that on board. I think kind of lastly, as with the discovery phase, where we kind of collect the basic inputs, and we do that throughout obviously all the sessions, with a proof of concept or pilot, we still need to run through kind of the business case and the business goals, because really they may be completely different at this stage of the project. Okay, so we still need to run through those, understand those, so that we're all working in the right direction. Okay, so with session 4, the redundancy network readiness, what we want to really focus on is kind of, well, we split this out. So let's first of all talk about the kind of network optimization. This is the readiness part to really ensure that the voice on your network is ready to go. Personally, I've seen plenty of networks that are already really congested without then adding additional kind of IP voice traffic. We'll cover both the physical, and what I mean by physical is talking about the structured cabling, the switches, the routers, topology that's in place, as well as Wi-Fi networks, especially given that most workforces now seem to be hugely mobile, and Wi-Fi is a key component. So what can you do to kind of mitigate congestion? After obviously, again, the last thing you want after you've invested all this time, all this money in migrating to Microsoft Teams, is then to have poor connection messages from a Teams client due to network congestion. And I think another key area in your kind of network topology, and this is one that I think we get the kind of most questions about, is that with user experience and with Microsoft 365 in mind, which kind of includes performance, reliability, and other important quality kind of characteristics, involves the kind of connectivity. And the connectivity that Microsoft 365 provides is through what they call a highly distributed service, and they've termed it front doors. Okay, and these are kind of scaled out across hundreds of Microsoft locations worldwide. And in the majority of cases, the best user experience is achieved by allowing the customer network to kind of route straight, route user requests straight to the closest Microsoft 365 service entry point, rather than kind of connecting to Microsoft 365 through, let's say, an egress point in a central location, like you typically have with an MPLS network or a star topology network, where your local your remote sites perhaps don't have a local breakout, and everything just goes back to one central egress point. So we cover all of these things obviously within that session. Then looking at kind of redundancy, and again, it's kind of one of my things to talk about redundancy. I think as IT professionals, we've kind of all learnt over time, whether planned or unplanned, how important it is to have redundancy built into every part of what's in our control. And in this case, we talk about the network, the compute, the storage, and let's obviously not forget WAN and LAN connectivity. All of these things are kind of within our control, and as IT professionals, would all like to have as much redundancy built in as possible. However, you obviously need to be pragmatic, and the limitation will always be kind of budget and geography. So we run through the whole kind of disaster recovery piece, and it's certainly something that's really been highlighted, I think, to a lot of organizations that have been using Microsoft Teams over the last few years, or their handles almost been forced to use Teams, is the the fact that obviously builds into a really good business continuity and disaster recovery strategy, because it's hosted in the cloud. You're letting Microsoft deal with having disparate systems and locations and all the rest of it. I'm also actually going to say, while session 4 perhaps isn't the most exciting of topics, I do highly recommend that it's attended by whoever deals with your networking. There are some quite technical discussions within this session, of which are really important, and they can be quite granular and talk about, different codecs and all the rest of it. So, do have the right people join this session, if they're available. So looking at session 5 now, and we talked about this within session 1, because obviously within session 1 we go through the discovery and planning phase, and we talk about analog and legacy integration. I think with all of the Launchpad sessions, the analog and legacy integration is one that's always really well attended, because a lot of people are sat there and they know, oh, right, okay, well, we've got this PBX and we've got all of these things. It plays on your mind. It's like, how are we going to get this to work? Management want us to do this. How do we do it? I do remember a colleague saying to me that he'd spoken to an organization that was really confident that they'd managed to move everything away from analog circuits, and upon further question it transpired they completely overlooked a number of systems. And this was mostly due to them, and I think like many organizations had grown kind of organically and through kind of acquisitions and mergers, which it made it really quite difficult to kind of trace everything. And on a side note, we do discuss that within this actual workshop. I think kind of the absolute best way to discover what you have, and this does sometimes or does sometimes mean it takes a while, is to actually talk to kind of your accounts payable. They'll most certainly be paying for lines that you don't know about, and that's where you'll kind of discover what it is you've got and how it's being used. I think with analog in mind, there are so many systems that you need to think about. When we think of analog, we instantly think, fax. Nobody uses fax anymore. You'd be surprised. I found actually when we were doing the last lot of sessions, the amount of people who used fax was mind-boggling. But hey ho, some people still require it. But that aside, door entry systems, announcement systems, alarms, lifts, barriers, door entry systems. We had one organization that had an analog circuit tied to, I want to say, some kind of valve in their environment, so that all these valves were controlled remotely via an analog line. All of these kind of things need deep consideration on how they're going to work going forward. How are they going to work with teams? How if there's still a requirement for them, we've still got to work out how we're going to get them to work with the new system. Obviously, with legacy integration, which may include obviously keeping your existing PBX, or another application. Like I said, I think I mentioned previously about a CRM system or a contact center system. Then we need to obviously look at that and look at that in depth. I mean, there are obviously systems that we can do. We can provide AudioCodes that can actually help legacy systems with some of our AI technology. So it's a damn good session to attend. There are obviously systems out there that we can provide, and this is one of our strengths, I think. We've got some fantastic guys that can actually go into the minutiae detail when it comes to analog and legacy integration, because this is what they cut their mustard on. This is what they've done day in, day out for many years. And then lastly, guys, session 6. So session 6 I think is a really, I mean, for me, again, it's a really important session. Microsoft Teams operations, often referred to as day 2. You've done all the work, you've done the discovery, you've done the design, user adoption, you've got your integration with your legacy PBX, okay, or whatever it might be. Microsoft Teams is running absolutely beautifully. Now you've got to manage it, and now you've got to support it, and like all your internal systems and applications, I think without question, Microsoft has done a great job of providing a really good administrative portal, aptly named the Teams admin portal. However, I think there are many tasks that are time consuming if you don't complete them using Microsoft PowerShell, and not everybody has those skills or expertise in house. So we look at lots of things and how you can try and make that a lot simpler, a lot easier. There are tools that you can use that make that a lot easier to do. Tools that actually remove the need for having PowerShell ninjas, if you like, PowerShell experts that actually take some of the tasks that would commonly be with a third line engineer down to even just a help desk engineer. And also within this session, we'll look at the in-service management and kind of the operational requirements, along with, I would say, like the daily management chart tasks. So, the kind of move, add, changes and deletes, or the MACDs as they're called, and how you go about that. I think obviously another key area to this session covers is looking at monitoring and reporting. Again, it's something it's often really overlooked, but when you start to have a problem, what do? You can't start pulling wires out, and you need to know the right information. Now, again, you can refer back to the Teams admin portal. You can go onto there. It will show you what Teams knows, but where, if, for example, if you're using direct routing from AudioCodes, then we see everything. We see client through to Teams. So the monitoring and reporting that you're going to get from us, as an example, is going to be far more detailed. And you actually see if a user says, I had a really bad call, it kept dropping in and out, then you're able to go onto the SBC, you're able to narrow in on that particular user, that particular time of day, and see actually, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, it was a problem with the user's home network or the user's home Wi-Fi, whatever it might have been, or it could have been, one of the SIP trunks was experiencing an issue. But you have that level of detail and that level of knowledge available to you. And then I think lastly, we look at the kind of managed service approach. And whilst that might not be for everybody, however, I do think there's still a large portion of organizations that perhaps don't have the in-house expertise and skills to manage a Microsoft Teams environment or manage a telephony environment. So we talk through all the different things that you can get from having a managed service approach, what's included within a managed service, what are the right questions to ask when being offered a managed service. Again, so if you haven't got those kind of things in place, you haven't got the skills and expertise in house, then again, it's a hugely beneficial session to attend. Now, hopefully I've not whizzed through that too quickly. I probably did, because I tend to get quite excited and elevated when I'm doing a presentation, especially when it's something I really enjoy, and the LaunchPad sessions is imparting knowledge, which I simply love. I believe the whole session will be recorded and it will be available to you. Okay. If you want to know more about the individual sessions, there's this will be available to you, made available to you afterwards. But you can go to https://launchpad.audiocodes.com and then the Launchpad-A workshop, blah blah blah. Okay, it's all there for you guys. So do a quick screenshot of that if you will. Now I believe we're going to have a Q&A session. So if anybody's got any questions, please ask away. Just bringing up the live Q&A. It's taken a while, so it could tell me there's lots of questions to be answered. Okay, so I've got 5 published questions, so bear with me. Okay. Okay, that's already been answered. Yep, so Melanie got a question there. Can we start for this series of workshops, Teams? Yeah, and Melanie put, yes, we're going to be expanding globally to accommodate other time zones. I know Melanie and I, we discussed this before this session. We are planning to do them again in the US. We're also planning to do them in local languages. Melanie mentioned Japan, but we're also intending on doing an English session within APAC, so they will be available globally. I can obviously see there's a question there. Are the workshops free? Absolutely, yes, they are. Are the purpose of the workshops to be supplemental to AudioCodes assisted implementation, or for independent administrators who prefer self-guided or partially assisted implementations? Well, I'm just going to say yes, yes, yes. Okay, if you've got us doing an implementation for you, then obviously it'd be great for you to attend the workshop so you know the process that we're going to actually run through. If you're an independent administrator, then by all means, attend these sessions. The outcome might be that you think, well, do you know what? I want AudioCodes to help me with that part, or I'm going to need some assistance with this particular area. So, yes, we can be as hands-on or hands-off as you kind of want us to be during your kind of journey. So what else have we got here? See more. The actual Launchpad workshops, they're not intended to be sales orientated at all. Okay, if whoever's asked that question has just come as anonymous, but if you'd like a more sort of sales focused sessions, It's certainly something we can consider. I'd kind of highly recommend looking at some of the Microsoft sessions. They're obviously very sales focused. I take it somebody's asking that question is are they selling, you looking to do Teams selling it to customers, or perhaps you can expand out on that one for me. Yes, and this is B Smith has asked, will Teams emergency calling be included? Yes, we do. I wish I had some of my guys on the call now to keep me honest, but I believe it's session 3 where we cover the E911 with the emergency calling. So yes, that is covered. It might be session 4 actually, but it is definitely covered. So that's all the questions that I see in front of me. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to raise? No? Okay. Well, do you know what? Thank you ever so much for attending today. Hopefully it's been hugely beneficial. Do go to the LaunchPad website. Do sign up for some of the sessions. It'd be great to meet you actually on the sessions, and to help you through your journey. This will be made available to you. We sent out to all attendees, so you'll be able to view the teaser session offline and to go through it slow time. But thank you ever so much.